You said this year would be different, that you would finally commit, that you would wake up early, take action daily, eat with discipline, and train your body like a man who respects himself. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, you did. But then the drift returned, the doubt whispered, and once again you stopped. You don't need more goals. You don't need another planner. You don't need to write it down again. You need to understand why you keep quitting on yourself. You need to face the invisible pattern that has ruled your life for years. You need to see that the reason you restart is because you have not yet become the man who finishes. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are not lazy. You are simply untrained in mental law. And until you master the law, you will repeat the same season under a new name again and again. 365 days promised, 17 days completed. Regret by February, silence by March. But that ends now. This is not another speech to inspire you. This is a system to transform you. If you listen, not casually, but with urgency, with spiritual obedience, with the decision of a man who is done starting over, you will learn how to obey your purpose with unbreakable consistency, finish what you start without relying on emotion, build an identity so strong failure cannot attach to you, train your mind to act daily, whether it feels like it or not, control your thoughts, your voice, and your environment, and break the cycle of quitting and never go back again. The man who masters this law becomes dangerous. He becomes calm. He becomes structured. He walks with the posture of someone who knows what he's building and will not stop until it is done. You've had the desire, you've had the vision, you've made the promises. Now it is time to become the man who completes the promise. But be warned, if you walk away from this message, you may drift for another year, another decade. But if you listen and obey, everything will change. This is the dividing line. Now ask yourself, are you ready to finally become the man who never starts over again? Then listen and do not drift. Part 1, the invisible pattern. Why you always return to zero. If your life feels like a series of restarts, if your ambition roars in January but dies in silence by February, if you make promises to act, to train, to speak with discipline, to rise early, to build your business, to fix your habits, and yet you keep returning to the same place, then let us remove all illusions. You are not lazy. You are undisciplined in identity. Men confuse effort with structure. They confuse desire with law. They confuse excitement with transformation. But no man has ever built lasting wealth, character, or dominion by excitement. He has done it by obeying invisible laws with visible action. You do not rise by emotion. You rise by obedience to law. Men hear truth all the time. They nod. They agree. They underline it in a book. But their life never changes. Why? Because they heard it, but they did not listen. To hear is passive. To listen is to act. To listen is to change your environment, to destroy the door back to failure, to build a new pattern from the inside out. And I must warn you, if you do not finish this message, if you drift midway through, if you allow distraction to interrupt the very voice you claimed you needed, you will repeat the same pattern again. And not because you are weak, but because you are still governed by the old law inside your mind. God does not bless indecision. The law cannot reward hesitation. The door you seek will not open for a man who still negotiates with excuses. But when a man becomes definite, everything begins to obey him. Time, energy, people, provision, doors, they all move when you do. But you must move in law. Let us begin. Because until this cycle is broken, your future will remain chained to your past. And no plan, no goal, no journal, no diet, no business scheme will survive unless the invisible pattern within you is broken and rebuilt. This is the truth few want to face. You always return to zero because you have trained yourself to do so. Not consciously, not with intent, but through repetition. You start, you drift, you fall, and you start again. And over time, this becomes your identity. And identity is law. Identity governs behavior. You must stop thinking you can change your life with more effort. You cannot. You change your life by changing the structure that controls your behavior. And that structure is built in thought, in word, and in repetition. What you say daily, what you allow daily, what you believe silently, that is the law of your life. There is a name for this in the invisible realm. I have called it the law of cosmic habit force. It is the spiritual law that cements repetition into rhythm. It is why failure repeats, why success multiplies, why you can sabotage a goal even while wanting it with your heart. Because your subconscious follows your pattern, not your desire. In my own life, I delayed the publishing of Think and Grow Rich, not because I lacked content, but because I had not yet killed the pattern of self-doubt, perfectionism, and delay. The book was ready, but I was not. And the world had to wait until I became definite, until my identity matched my assignment. This is not weakness. It is lawlessness in the mind. You want results that are built in law, but your daily life is governed by moods, whims, and inconsistency. And so the results never last. They rise for a moment, and then they die in silence. And so you restart again and again, but no more. Say this aloud now. I no longer tolerate patterns that kill my vision. I now command my direction through obedience to law. You must see the trap to escape it. And the trap is emotional-based identity. The man who acts only when he feels like it is doomed to repeat failure. Because emotion is undisciplined. Emotion is momentary. Emotion is shaped by environment. But the man who builds identity by law, he cannot be moved. You must start to see your repeated failures not as random, but as spiritual habit loops. They are rehearsed. They are reinforced. And every time you quit, you tell your subconscious, this is who I am. And then you act it out again. Not because you hate progress, but because your identity does not match your goal. You have become good at starting. You have become skilled at recommitting. You have mastered declaring change. But the man who succeeds is not the man who starts loud. It is the man who becomes so rooted in law that his behavior becomes automatic. That is the man who finishes. This invisible pattern is not broken by emotion. It is broken by structure. You must wake at the same hour. Think the same focused thoughts. Speak your definite chief aim aloud morning and night. You must train your mind like you would train a wild beast, with repetition and force. And I must tell you, the man who still entertains distraction cannot break this cycle. If your phone, your environment, your acquaintances have more power over you than your inner command, you will lose again, not because the goal is impossible, but because your allegiance is divided. The mind must be directed like an army. It must be commanded by thought. It must be filled with order. Because if you do not dominate it, it will drift. And when it drifts, it will return to the last program it obeyed. That program is failure until you replace it with identity. Say it again with me. I no longer tolerate patterns that kill my vision. I now command my direction through obedience to law. This is the moment where you stop making decisions based on how you feel and start making them based on who you must become. If you only act when it is convenient, you will never escape the cycle. But when you act because it is required, then law rewards you. You are not your old story. You are not your last attempt. You are what you decide today, and your mind is waiting to be told what is now law. But law must be enforced. It must be written, spoken, enforced in habit until identity is rewired. And once identity is rewired, you will no longer start over, because the new man does not return to the old path. He walks in a straight line. He walks in completion. He walks in fire. He walks as one who knows he was born to finish what he begins. Part 2, the break in belief, how inconsistency is always a faith issue. Men search for reasons why they quit. They blame their schedule, their obligations, their energy. But no man has ever quit something he truly believed in. What a man does not believe, he will not finish. What he doubts internally, he will eventually walk away from, no matter how much he proclaims it aloud. You do not suffer from inconsistency. You suffer from unbelief. You start with force, but your faith has cracks. And when pressure rises, those cracks begin to leak discipline, clarity, and will. You stop not because it's hard, but because you did not decide to believe before it got hard. Faith is not emotion. Faith is not energy. Faith is not the fire you feel on day one. Faith is the decision you make when nothing is working. Faith is obedience to law, even when the ground is dry, the door is shut, the results are slow. The man who waits for proof never finishes. You say, I want to believe, but belief is not something you feel into. It is something you obey into. You do not wait for belief. You train it. You declare it. You speak it aloud before the results appear. The man who waits to believe will be buried in delay for decades. Doubt is not passive. It is rot. And if it is not identified and replaced, it eats your persistence from the inside. You still move, but slowly. You still act, but without power. You still speak, but without conviction, and soon you stop. Because you never truly believed you could finish. Look at Henry Ford. He was mocked, called a fool, told it couldn't be done. But Ford never required validation. His belief was not an emotion. It was an inner law. He decided that his vision was true before anyone else saw it, and so the world eventually had no choice but to yield. This is the level of belief required if you want to break the cycle. You must become the man who believes before he sees. You must build the image of success in your mind so clearly that when doubt knocks, it finds no room left to rent in your heart. Say this aloud now. I do not need more proof. I decide to believe without it. I act as if it is done. You keep quitting because your belief has never been made unquestionable. You still seek permission. You still check the winds. You still wait for applause. But the law rewards only the decided man, the man who walks as if the result has already bowed before him. And belief must be defended every day, in thought, in word, in silence. You must rise each morning and choose again. I believe, I obey, I persist. If you do not repeat it, your mind will default to the old path. That path leads to drift, to hesitation, to failure. The subconscious mind does not care what is true. It obeys what is repeated. If you repeat doubt, you program failure. If you repeat belief, even before seeing a result, your mind begins to expect the result. And what is expected with belief will eventually manifest. Every man is given two choices: live by faith or live by fear. Faith walks through delay and keeps moving. Fear pauses, hesitates, and returns to safety. And every time you choose fear, you weaken your ability to commit again. This is not motivational, it is spiritual mechanics. You must remove from your life everything that feeds your doubt. Voices, news, habits, distractions, cut them. Anything that makes you hesitate must be destroyed. Because hesitation is the assassin of dreams, and belief cannot survive in an environment of compromise. You are not unmotivated. You are undecided. And until you decide to believe without seeing, your results will rise and fall with your emotions. But the man who walks in law acts regardless of appearance, because he no longer serves emotion, he serves decision. You say, I'll try. You must say, it is done. You say, we'll see. You must say, I already see it in my mind. You say, I hope. You must say, I command it through faith and persistence. Your words reveal your belief, and what you declare daily becomes law. Say it again with me. I do not need more proof. I decide to believe without it. I act as if it is done. The man who decides once and never reopens that decision, he is the man who becomes unstoppable. Because no wind can change his direction. No voice can silence his obedience. No delay can break his pace. He does not require signs. He is the sign. This is how you break the cycle of failure. Not with another system. Not with a new journal. Not with better strategy. But with unquestionable belief, chosen and reinforced every single day. until it becomes your nature, until it becomes your law. And when belief becomes law in your life, discipline is no longer a burden. It is your normal. It is how you move, speak, and command your world. You will no longer start over because you will not doubt again. The old you is gone. The indecisive you is buried. The faithful man has risen. Part 3, the drift habit. Why you sabotage your own momentum. The greatest enemy of achievement is not hardship. It is not lack of knowledge. It is not even failure. The greatest enemy is drift. It is subtle, slow, and invisible. It begins as postponement. It masks itself as rest. It arrives with good reason, but once it takes root, it steals your direction and blinds your urgency. Drift never arrives with warning. It slips in when the fire cools. It sits next to you during comfort. It whispers after a victory, just for today, take it easy. And that single permission begins the cycle again. You stop repeating your aim, you forget why you began, and then you fall, not from force, but from silence. In Outwitting the Devil, I exposed drift as the devil's favorite method, not temptation, not crisis, but drift. Why? Because drift requires no sin, no crime, no rebellion, just indecision. The man who drifts does not need to be destroyed. He is already surrendered. He walks in circles, though he believes he's moving forward. Let me ask you directly, have you felt it? That invisible resistance when it's time to act. The hesitation before doing what you know must be done. That voice that says, you've done enough for now. That voice is not your friend. It is the language of drift, and if you entertain it, you will bury your own progress. Drift is not laziness. It is a habit of spiritual hesitation. It is the loss of direction, not the loss of energy. It is when a man allows environment to command him instead of commanding his environment. It is not weakness. It is the absence of definiteness, and no man can succeed without a fixed aim. This is why you sabotage your own momentum, because once the feeling fades, you have no structure left. You built your action on emotion, not purpose, but purpose must be decided in advance and reinforced through daily obedience. Otherwise, your mind will revert to drift and call it rest. Say this aloud with me. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. Men start businesses with vision, but stop after the applause fades. They begin disciplines, but quit once discomfort rises. They commit to health, but break it when convenience knocks. Why? Not because the goal was wrong, but because the man did not master drift. The man who breaks the drift habit does not ask, how do I feel today? He asks, what is required of me today? He does not wait for inspiration. He moves in repetition. He speaks his aim aloud when no one watches. He guards his mind. He refuses delay. He understands that every day he drifts, his dream bleeds. Thomas Edison endured 10,000 failed attempts, not because he was superhuman, but because he had no room left in his mind for drift. His definiteness was so fixed that delay could not discourage him. Criticism could not bend him. Discomfort could not stop him, because his vision was more real than his feelings. And that is what you must build. A mind so definite that when drift tries to enter, it finds a closed door. No access, no permission, no negotiation. The man who walks with purpose does not need motivation. He is possessed by his aim. His habits do not ask for approval. They obey inner law. You must now remove the triggers of drift, the distractions, the idle conversations, the environments that feed passivity. You must cut away every doorway to comfort that weakens your command, because every moment spent in drift must be paid for in delay. The cost of drift is not just lost time, it is lost identity. Every day you drift, you tell your mind that direction is optional, and if direction is optional, then discipline becomes impossible. Drift does not only delay the goal, it weakens the man. Say it again with me. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. There is no partial escape from this. You are either definite or you are drifting. There is no middle path. A man cannot walk with purpose on some days and with distraction on others. He must choose one. And if you do not choose, drift chooses for you. Drift leads to apathy. Apathy leads to confusion. Confusion leads to guilt. Guilt leads to surrender. And so you find yourself a month later wondering what happened again. And the cycle begins anew until the day you burn the bridges to drift and declare new law within yourself. You must now repeat your chief aim every morning and every night. Not sometimes, not when it feels powerful, but always. You must repeat it until it governs your speech, your movement, your thinking, until no part of you is available for drift. And this is not just strategy, it is spiritual protection. The man who lives in definiteness is guarded. His mind is aligned. His thoughts are fortified. Drift cannot enter a soul that is already commanded by decision. The devil flees the man who is occupied by purpose. Drift is the destroyer of empires, and it begins with small permissions. Tomorrow, later, just one day off. These are not harmless phrases, they are seeds, and once they grow, they wrap around your energy like weeds. They choke your vision until you forget you ever had one, but you remember now. That is why you are still listening, because part of you knows that nothing will change until drift is destroyed. You cannot build a future with one hand on purpose and the other in procrastination. You must release the second. You must become unavailable to drift. Say it aloud again. I do not drift. I fix my mind daily on my chief aim and walk in obedience to it. There is no second life. There is no alternate season. There is only this one. And if you do not take command of it now, it will be spent in delay disguised as effort. But the man who destroys drift becomes a law to himself. He finishes what he begins. He commands his environment, and life submits. Part 4, the identity gap. You keep starting over because you have not become the man who finishes. You do not have a discipline problem. You do not have a strategy problem. You have an identity gap. You keep starting over because your actions are not anchored to who you believe yourself to be. And no matter how powerful your plan is, your life will always follow your identity, not your effort. You don't need more willpower. You need a new self-image. You must become the man who finishes, not just the one who desires, who begins, who proclaims, the one who crosses the line. And until your inner man reflects the end result, you will always fall back into the image of the man who quits. This is the truth most men refuse to face. They speak with the voice of ambition, but they still think with the identity of mediocrity. And what you think about yourself in silence will always defeat what you speak aloud in public, because your results obey your subconscious, not your declarations. A man may write his chief aim on paper, yet if in his thoughts he still sees himself as weak, behind, inconsistent, then that aim is already buried. You must build a new picture of who you are before you try to walk into the vision, because the man who still thinks like a failure will find a way to fail. Charles M. Schwab did not become the steel magnate of his time by accident. He was born to an average family, but he refused to think average. He walked into boardrooms before anyone took him seriously, but he took himself seriously. His identity was forged long before his name was known. The outer world catches up to the man who first becomes within. You must stop chasing success and start embodying the version of yourself that is already trusted with it. Because until you become the man mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you will sabotage every opportunity handed to you. Say this aloud now. I am the man who finishes. I do not restart, I complete. My actions serve my new identity. Behavior is not random. It is the outgrowth of self-perception. If you see yourself as the man who falls off after 30 days, you will. If you see yourself as the man who loses interest after progress slows, You will. If you believe you are the man who never follows through, then you are. And that belief will become law. You must tear down the image of the quitter. You must bury the story of inconsistency. You must write a new mental biography. A man who obeys law. A man who builds rhythm. A man who is not available for old excuses. A man who finishes what he begins, because that is who he is now. The mistake is thinking your past behavior defines you. It does not. The only thing that defines you is the voice you obey now. And when that voice begins to say, I finish, I do not drift, I command my day, I complete what I start, then every thought, habit, and result must align with that new man. The subconscious mind only asks, who am I serving today? And it serves the voice it hears most often. If that voice is guilt, doubt, and regret, it will build in that image. If that voice is confidence, clarity, and decision, it will rebuild your life to reflect it. The choice is daily, and the voice must be enforced. You do not need to try harder. You need to become different. You need to wake up and speak as the man who cannot be moved by circumstance, who no longer repeats apologies for drifting, who no longer negotiates with delay, who no longer entertains the identity of a man he buried in silence. And you must act accordingly. Do not wait until you feel like the man who finishes. Begin to move like him, speak like him, plan like him, cut distractions like him, guard your mind like him. You don't become him through waiting. You become him through obedience to identity before it fully feels real. Say it again with me. I am the man who finishes. I do not restart. I complete. My actions serve my new identity. This is how the cycle ends, not by changing what you do, but by changing who you are when you do it. If you want new fruit, plant new seed, and the most powerful seed is self-definition. If you say it daily, live it hourly, and act without compromise, your reality will eventually bow to your command. You are not waiting for transformation. You are speaking it into form. You are not starting another cycle. You are closing the gate to failure. You are now becoming the man who must be obeyed by habit, by emotion, by circumstance, because your voice has become law in your own life. This is no longer about motivation. This is about dominion. The man who commands himself cannot be ruled by the past. The man who sees himself as victorious cannot tolerate delay. The man who has become cannot be broken because his identity is no longer up for debate. From this moment forward, you finish. Not because it's easy, not because it's convenient, but because it is required by the man you are now. You finish because you said you would, and what you say, you obey. And what you obey, you become. Part 5. The definite chief aim. Why starting without direction guarantees failure. A man without direction is a man without power. And I say to you now, if you do not have a definite chief aim written, repeated, and burned into your subconscious mind, you are walking in circles. You may be busy, you may be talented, but you are still lost. Because energy without direction always leads to destruction. You do not drift because you are weak. You drift because you are unclear. The mind will not obey a vague command. The subconscious will not assist a blurred image. And infinite intelligence will not deliver riches into the hands of a man who has not first declared exactly what he intends to do with them. This is not theory. This is spiritual law. The mind is like a field. It can grow weeds or it can grow harvest. But it cannot produce anything until the seed is specific. I want to be successful is not a seed. I want to be healthy is not a seed. These are wishes, dreams, smoke. You must now plant law. Your definite chief aim is the cornerstone of your success. It is the fixed point from which all plans emerge. It is the measuring rod for every yes and no in your day. It governs your speech, your habits, your friends, your schedule. It becomes your inner law, and once obeyed, it transforms your world. When